Welcome to the Workbench and welcome to another episode of Wheels Wings TV. Today we have the new 1/72nd scale de Havilland Vampire Mark III from Special Hobby. Let's have a look. Right, first sprue, we've got our upper and lower fuselage. We've got our upper wings. Yeah, upper wings. And intakes, some drop tanks, some wheels, other bits and bobs. Relatively nice panel lines. Nice and sharp. This is not a super new kit. This has been out for quite a few years now, but it seems like they've held up pretty good, and they've got some pretty sharp details. I know the most recent Special Hobby stuff is hot. They've been really up in their game, and this is definitely worthy of admiration, at least on the sprues. How it goes together is another story. Some nice detail on the cannon muzzles. Now those are kind of just molded solid and stopped, so I might want to drill those out, maybe put some brass tubing in there for those 20mm Hispano guns. Little bit of flash here and there, so especially on these engine intakes you got a bit of flash around there, so you definitely want to get in there and get that taken care of. I just get in there with a knife and scrape that out very carefully, or if you got a very small file. Wings look good, nice sharp panel lines. I would like to see the control surfaces a little bit deeper, but we can always take that out with a scriber. Wheels look pretty good. Hub detail in the back anyway, and the 3-spoke wheels on the front look nice. Of course, no real tread detail per se, but that's not a huge deal breaker. Landing gear struts look good, not too much of a mold line on there, so that's okay. The face of the turbine there, that looks pretty good. Paint that up, wash that, get those blades to pop out a little bit. Ejector pins, no big sticky outy ones, so no problem there. A little bit of detail inner one of the wheel bay doors, perhaps. A little bit of lightning hole detail on the inside. Got some fins, look like for some rockets. Not too shabby. Of course, this right stamped on here, made by MPM Productions, so MPM, CMK, they're all kind of part of the same family with Special Hobby, but looks pretty good so far. Next sprue, we got our lower wing halves. We got our tail booms with our rudders. Okay, we got our, is that the intake, or I think that's the intake, but that's funky looking. Cockpit floor, we have another engine intake. I guess optional for subtle little differences. Not as flashy as the other ones, that's nice. Horizontal tail, nice and smooth. Basic instrument panel, just some recessed circles for the gauges. Cockpit seat, got those rockets with the rails molded integrally. Got some nice little rivet or fastener detail around these little hatches on the tail booms. That's nice. We do have, yeah, we've got the actual rudder molded complete to 1/2, so it gets us a nice sharp trailing edge. Pitot tube molded in place, so carefully don't break that off, or break it off so you know where it is. A little bit of detail in the interface of the gear doors. Too bad. It's again nice. The molds look like they're nice and clean. Not too shabby. And lastly, our clear sprue. So we've got separate windshield and sliding portions, so you can pose the cockpit open. You've got the full wingtips and the clipped wingtips molded in clear, so you can do your landing lights, or sorry, navigation lights. So depending on whether the Vampire had clear covers or clear bulbs, you might have to drill all the way out there to get that representation of the bulb, like we did on the Mosquito from Airfix. And we do get the optional clear nose cone with the window clear part, or the clear top window in it for some reason. Now these are little lensy. These are not the, I mean, they're nice and clear, but there's a fair amount of distortion in there, so don't go crazy on the cockpit detail. I'm pretty sure the cockpits on Vampires were black anyway, so, or just slide it open, then you'd definitely be able to see what you're looking at. But, you know, as 72nd scale kits go, you know, kind of thick, kind of lensy, but not too bad. And our decals. Now, these do say printed in Czech Republic, and the judging from the big sploogies of clear, I'm going to hazard a guess and say these might be similar to those new type Edward decals where you can peel the clear film off after the decal's been set. Don't quote me on that, but I wouldn't be surprised because Special Hobby and Edward have cooperated in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if they have similar decal printing procedures. But color looks really good. No really discernible print lines or matrix, so very well done. Of course, we've got our Royal Canadian Air Force, our Norwegian, Mexican, and Royal Air Force markings. Got all of our little stencils, and they are generally relatively legible. And these ones here could be a bit of a pain because you have large areas of clear and very thin lines, but if that peels off, then those will look really good. Seat belts, never look that great at decals, so see how that goes. Instrument panel, just white gauge faces. That'll probably be more than adequate for 72nd scale if you have the cockpit closed. Hard to say exactly how these will behave. They seem nice and thin, so they should go down quite nicely. Special Hobby decals I've used in the past, you show them a bottle of Solvaset and they just suck right down, so. But that might require a little bit of a test to see if these behave like the Edward ones. Little bit of a, just notice this, little bit of a misprint on the tail for one of the Mexican ones here, so check, if you're doing the Mexican one, check yours. You may, honestly, I would probably paint the rudders anyway, just skip the decals, so if I was doing the Mexican one, wouldn't be a big deal, but just maybe keep an eye out for that. And if you're doing the Royal Air Force one, these serial numbers usually overlap onto the landing gear doors, so you're going to have to take care to make sure everything lines up on those. But as far as decals go, look pretty decent. And our instructions. Nice little blurb on the history of the Vampire, some basic performance numbers, and of course our very pretty Canadian one right on the top here. Vampire Mk.3 European and American operators. Got our sprue map, quite a few parts called out as not for use. So those would be catering to other variants. Special Hobby do quite a few different variants of the Vampire. Cockpit going together. Black, 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 black. So the fact that you get some kind of distorted clear parts isn't a huge deal because the cockpit's completely black, so not much to be seen. And yes, so that is, this weird part is our engine intake right here, which is curious because the Vampire had a single engine, yet it's kind of got, looks sort of almost like two separate intakes as opposed to like two halves of one intake. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with that, but honestly I don't know how much of that is going to be seen behind these intakes, so that might not be a huge deal. And okay, that's the exhaust part there. Of course, you got to paint up some of these inner areas before you glue everything together. Cockpit, fuselage, top and bottom go together. Hopefully that's it. Now, most of any seam is going to be hidden by the wing, so it's only really the nose we're really going to have to worry about. And two different noses depending on the scheme. Of course, Scheme A, as we can also see here, that Canadian one has that clear portion on the nose. Now, I don't believe all Canadian ones had that. This specific airframe does, so if you're doing a different Canadian Vampire, definitely consult your references. They do say to add weight, they do not say how much, so pack as much as you can in there so this thing doesn't sit on its butt. Got the tail plane with some counterbalances. I would leave those off till the end. Always leave your brakey bits till the end. Got your top and bottom wing halves go together. Opposite parts number, so yeah, 51, 50, 32. So yeah, that's no drama, nothing to insert, so just glue the wings together. Wings go into place, and then you've got your engine intakes. We are using the rounded wing tips, and they show painting the entire lens color, so don't have to drill out for the light there. That's nice. I would say probably paint that first, mask it off, then do the rest of the airframe. Got your tail booms go together. Go on to the horizontal tail, then all the landing gear bits, which of course leave those off until the end. Cockpit canopy and windshield go in place. Got our drop tanks. Now the holes for them are already opened up, so you don't need to drill those out. So I guess if you're not doing drop tanks, you'll need to fill those in. Now they do say to remove and fill holes on both sides. Put this back here. Okay, so I'm assuming this is probably where the rockets would mount on other Vampires, so they're saying to fill those in. Those are not relevant for the schemes in this kit. And if you want to crank up the detail to 11, they've got a cockpit photo etch set, canopy mask, and a nice set of resin wheels with some tread detail. And our Vampire's done. On to the paint schemes. So first one here, and probably why a lot of you have bought this kit, Vampire Mk.3, number 438, City of Montreal, Royal Canadian Auxiliary Air Force, Saint-Hubert, 1955. Nice, colorful Canadian Vampire with the red wingtips and tail. Big flash down the side. The Vampire was, of course, the first jet to be flown by the Royal Canadian Air Force. Saw service during the 1950s until they were ultimately replaced by Canadair-built Sabres. Got another Vampire from the Royal Norwegian Air Force in 1948, so shortly after the end of the war. Just plain silver all over. Now, of course, good chunks of the vampire made out of wood, so these were not bare metal. These were painted in what was called high-speed silver. This was an aluminum powder mixed into a clear varnish that was then painted over the entire airframe. So they look very shiny, but they were painted silver, not bare metal. So you don't need to go crazy on getting a perfect mirror polish on these. Just bog standard silver paint will be more than enough. And of course, counter to that, we have a completely green Mexican Air Force example, which was actually an ex-Canadian aircraft, which they had in service from 1961 to 1970. Holy crap. So put that in context, you got an aircraft that first went to service at the end of the Second World War, being flown in the era of F-4 Phantoms, MiG-21s, very advanced aircraft. But hey, better than no airplanes at all. So very colorful. You got nice yellow markings, green camouflage over with purple on the tail with the tricolor of the Mexican flag. And of course, the most unique thing with the Mexican Air Force is they have these triangular roundels. They don't go circular or square like everybody else. They went with a triangle, which is kind of unique. And last but not least, a Royal Air Force Vampire of 614, County of Glamorgan Squadron, Royal Auxiliary Air Force in 1951 in Wales. So we have a Welsh Vampire. And a whole bunch of promo stuff for CMK and Special Hobby. By the way, I have built the Meteor 11. That is a pretty decent kit. Wings are a bit of a pain, but the cockpit and the fuselage is fantastic. So, the latest boxing of the 1/72nd scale Vampire from Special Hobby. And finally, with some proper Canadian markings on it. About damn time. Definitely looks good on the sprue. If this is as good as some of the latest Special Hobby kits I've done, this should be a pretty decent little kit. Actually, I don't think there's too many other options for 72nd scale Vampires that aren't ancient Frog or Airfix examples. So this is, regardless, this is probably the best 72nd scale Vampire you can get right now. 4 very colorful markings. And of course, if you don't like this one, Special Hobby have done probably at least half a dozen or more different iterations of the Vampire from pretty much everybody who's used it. So lots to choose from if you don't like this one. We do have a few of these in stock, so you can check those out online or hit us up in store. And if you'd like to see more content like this, make sure to hit subscribe and click that like button. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.